Other attack on September 11th. Terrorists went after a U.S. diplomatic post in Benghazi, Libya on September 11th, 2012, killing 4 Americans, including the U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens. Tonight, the alleged ringleader is in custody, the first arrest in the case. This was President Obama earlier today.
It's important for us to send a message to the world that when Americans are attacked, no matter how long it takes, we will find those responsible and we will bring them to justice. And that's a message I sent the day after it happened, and regardless of how long it takes, we will find you.
Ahmed Abu Khatallah was captured over the weekend. Justice correspondent Bob Orr is in Washington. Bob?
Well, Jeff, this operation had been planned for well over the last year. U.S. officials now tell us they believe that this is a picture of Ahmed Abu Khatallah. Officials say they wanted to move on him when he was least protected and least likely to resist. That opportunity came Sunday night. After the Benghazi attacks, Khatallah often appeared in public, unconcerned about any potential capture. But after word leaked last summer that he'd been charged by the U.S. Justice Department, sources say Khatallah became more cautious and frequently changed locations, often joined by just a few close friends. But U.S. intelligence ultimately tracked Khatallah to a small seaside villa south of Benghazi. Sunday evening after dark, U.S. commandos and FBI agents silently converged on the home and quickly captured Khatallah without firing a shot. No one was hurt. Pentagon spokesman Admiral John Kirby.
The important thing for everybody to remember is he's no longer on the streets, and he will be held accountable. He will be tried in a court of law here in the United States.
Khatallah is now on a U.S. Navy ship in the Mediterranean, where he's being interrogated by a special intelligence team. Counterterrorism officials want information about alleged co-conspirators and potential threats. Sources say other Islamic radicals have also been charged in the Benghazi case. Those charges remain sealed. But 22 months after the attacks that killed 4 Americans, only Khatallah is in custody. Today, FBI Director James Comey pledged to press the investigation and had this warning for other suspects.
But the message is, we will shrink the world to find you, we will shrink the world to bring you to justice, and this is a good example of that.
Now, once the intelligence interrogation at sea is over, Khatallah will be read his Miranda rights and then brought to Washington to face criminal charges. Jeff, he could face the death penalty.
Bob Orr, thank you. President Obama today asked congressional leaders to meet with him tomorrow about the crisis in Iraq as he considers his options. We have a series of reports tonight. First, Major Garrett with more on that White House meeting tomorrow. Major?
Jeff, administration officials tell us the president will make the case for sending a limited number of Special Forces troops to Iraq. Now, the president had insisted he did not want to put boots on the ground in this newly flaring conflict, but now believes Special Forces are necessary to develop better intelligence on the Sunni insurgents should airstrikes be ordered. The president also wants an up-close assessment of the fighting strength and will of Iraqi security forces in and around Baghdad. Now, the president will not, we are told, present a prepackaged decision to congressional leaders, but seek consensus. For as White House aides here readily acknowledge, the president will need political backing for this and any subsequent move he makes in Iraq.
Major Garrett, thank you. In Iraq, Sunni and Shiite political leaders made a joint call for national unity in the battle against Sunni militants trying to form an Islamic state ruled by Sharia law. Last week, the militants seized Iraq's second-largest city, Mosul. Clarissa Ward has the aftermath.
On the road into Mosul, the charred remains of military equipment left as Iraqi soldiers fled. This video, shot by a local journalist for a French news channel, offers a rare glimpse of life in the city 1 week after it was taken over by the al-Qaeda splinter group ISIS. The markets are open and well-stocked, but masked gunmen roam the streets. A long line snakes outside the ISIS recruiting center. Here in Baghdad, there is also recruiting, as thousands of volunteers join Shiite militias. Rallies like these are now a daily occurrence. These fighters told us they consider it a sacred duty to defend their city. Across town, markets were far quieter than usual today.
Most people in Baghdad don't believe that ISIS will come marching into the city, but what they fear is a surge in the number of bombings, and this city already averages about 8 a day.
General Saad Ma'an is a spokesman for the Interior Ministry, the department in charge of Iraq's internal security.
Our goal is to liberate our cities.
He denies Iraq is in the midst of a sectarian civil war and that arming Shiite volunteers is a dangerous idea.
When you create these Shiite militias, it reignites those old sectarian tensions.
We don't have militias.
You do have
we
militias.
Have tribes.
I've seen
we
the
have
militias.
Tribes, and you can see the
Asa'ab
tribes
al-Haq.
there. No, it's
Badr
only.
Brigade.
Now we are talking with the tribes, with
Jaysh al-Mahdi.
Sunni and Shia tribes. We must liberate Iraq. And Iraq for Sunni and for Shia, for Christian.
But Jeff, we may already be seeing a new wave of sectarian killings here in the capital. This morning, the bodies of 4 young men, presumed to be Sunnis, were found in a neighborhood controlled by a Shiite militia. They had been shot numerous times. And of course, this is a chilling reminder for everyone here of that terrifying period in 2006 and 2007 when sectarian death squads terrorized the city.
Clarissa Ward in Baghdad, thank you.
The United States government has been working to support the Iraqi government and all of Iraq's communities in their common fight against this vicious threat of terror, so-called ISIL. We are consulting closely, and I've been on the phone with their leaders as well over the past week. We're consulting closely with a full range of Iraqis' leaders on an inclusive political path forward, even as we provide assistance to Iraq's security forces. The bottom line here is that Iraqis have to put together and pull together in order to defeat this enemy, and then move toward building a better future for all Iraqi people. And we will help them in that effort.
Foreign journalists are not allowed into Mosul. Holly Williams talked to an Iraqi who has seen what's happening.
This doctor who works in Mosul made his way through checkpoints to meet us a few miles outside the city. The Islamic extremists known as ISIS have been welcomed by many in Mosul. Like the militants, most of its residents are Sunni Muslims who resent the Iraqi government, which is dominated by Shiite Muslims. The doctor wouldn't show his face, not because he's frightened of ISIS, but because he fears retribution from Iraq's government. Have ISIS enforced Islamic law in Mosul?
Actually, they have this area, but they are not for people.
He told us his hospital only has water for 2 hours a day because the Iraqi government switched off the water supply. So things are better under ISIS?
As the people say, it is better than a government. It is better.
Why?
Because they gave him freedom.
In internet videos, ISIS shows a very different face, including summary executions of its enemies.
If you do not think the way they do, you die. That's it.
Retired Colonel Harry Shute fought in Iraq during the US invasion and now advises Iraqi politicians. He blames Iraq's US-backed government for dividing the country along religious lines and driving the country's Sunni Muslims into the arms of ISIS. Can Iraq survive as a state?
Looking at it right now, I don't think so. I think the Iraq that we had in our vision from a couple of years ago or whatever is finished.
Some people here have told us that Iraq's religious fault lines are now so deep that, Jeff, the only way of avoiding all-out civil war is to allow the country to split apart.
Holly Williams, thank you. Today, the man who has re-energized the movement for stricter gun laws took his fight to the nation's capital. Last month, Richard Martinez lost his son, one of 6 students shot or stabbed to death near the University of California, Santa Barbara. Nancy Cordes has more.
The last time I saw Chris was in a small room in the mortuary.
Richard Martinez didn't come to Washington to meet with politicians. He came to meet parents from Newtown, Tucson, and Columbine who know the grief he's feeling.
There's a hole in my heart that nothing can fill.
20-year-old Chris Martinez was killed 26 days ago in a Santa Barbara deli. His father's public statement was raw and impassioned.
Too many have died. We should say to ourselves, not one more.
Those words have become a rallying cry. 600,000 Americans signed up to send postcards bearing the phrase to elected officials. And it re-energized gun safety advocates like Sandy and Lonnie Phillips, whose daughter Jessica died in the movie theater massacre in Aurora, Colorado in 2012.
Gun violence in our nation is caused by craven and irresponsible politicians and the corporate gun lobby that buy their votes to block any and all reasonable life-saving solutions.
When you talk to these parents who have been fighting for smarter gun laws for 15 years and haven't gotten anywhere, does that discourage you?
Not a bit. You could tell me that everything that I'm going to do or plan to do will not be successful. That will not alter what I'm going to do one bit.
I asked the top Republican and the top Democrat in the Senate today whether there is any new room for agreement on proposals that most Americans support, like strengthening background checks or dealing with mental health. Their answers were vague and non-committal.
Nancy Cordes, thank you. Tomorrow, Customs and Border Patrol agents will give reporters access to buildings where they're holding foreign children crossing into this country without parents. Tens of thousands have entered illegally this year, and more are coming every day. Here's Vicente Arenas.
We spoke to these boys in their family's apartment near Washington, D.C.
How old are you?
17.
17. How old are you?
15.
15. And how old are you?
12.
They asked us not to use their names. Their family paid smugglers $9,000 to bring them from Honduras to the Texas border. They crossed the Rio Grande River alone in January.
What was the worst part about the journey here for you?
Cruzar aquí.
To crossing the river.
The boys are from San Pedro Sula, the city with the highest murder rate in the world. They say they had to escape gangs that shot their older brother.
You were afraid you were going to get killed?
Sí.
Yes, he told us. They had already told me that they were going to kill me. They are among a wave of children who have crossed into the U.S. without their parents. More than 47,000 have come here illegally since last June. The boys we met flagged down a Border Patrol agent once they entered the U.S. They took our shoes, he told us, and they put us in the car. They were taken to a center like this one, where they were able to call their mother, who's been in the U.S. for 5 years.
Were you ever afraid when you were coming this way?
Yes, he said, there are people that have come here to die in the desert. You come with fear. The boys spent 3 months in a Chicago shelter before reuniting with their mother.
Is it hard to talk about these things?
Yes, it's hard, he said. The boys are waiting for a deportation hearing to be scheduled. The Border Patrol expects 40,000 more immigrants like them this year.
In Nebraska, twin tornadoes last night killed 2 people and hurt more than a dozen. Today, the National Weather Service said one tornado was an EF4 with winds as high as 200 miles an hour. It wiped out most of a small town near the Iowa border. Justin Pizzero is in Pilger, Nebraska tonight. Justin?
Double tornadoes are rare. These were separated by a mile. The funnel on the left hit Pilger, a small village surrounded by corn and soybeans.
City Hall's gone, fire department's destroyed, public library severe damage.
County Sheriff Mike Unger.
It's total devastation. Total devastation. Again, 75% of the town, in my opinion, is damaged or destroyed beyond repair.
Pilger is only about 6 blocks long by 6 blocks wide, with fewer than 350 residents. One person here was killed by the storm, 5-year-old Callista Dixon.
We believe that she was in a mobile home on Main Street and was completely devastated, and we found her in that vicinity along with another critically injured female.
Her mother is expected to recover. Her brother, Cody Murphy, says the family moved here just 4 months ago.
She was a smart, funny girl. I mean, she just loved everybody.
Many here are stunned by the sudden destruction. The top floor of the Matsons' house was blown off. They took this cell phone video of their search for a wedding ring. Somehow, they found it. And already residents here say that they plan to rebuild. And Jeff, a lot of people that we spoke with say that this town is already living up to its motto, a tiny town, too tough to die.
Justin, thank you very much. There is so much attention on the World Cup right now, not so much on the sport you're about to see or the athlete you're about to meet. Here's Manuel Bajorges.
In the world of extreme sports, there is no one like 22-year-old Aaron Fotheringham.
Oh, he's here. Oh, he's in a wheelchair. He's confined to his wheelchair. And to me, I'm always like, I'm not confined, you know? I'm riding it like it's a skateboard or a bike, and I love it.
Fotheringham was born with spina bifida, a spinal cord defect that left him without the use of his legs. Even as a baby, the condition didn't slow him down. By 8, he was learning tricks at the skate park. In 2009, he landed the first ever wheelchair double backflip.
When I landed the double backflip was the best moment of my life.
You're motivated by the fact that people are saying you can't do this or you shouldn't do this.
When someone says you shouldn't or you can't, it kind of makes you want to do it even more.
That's why last year, he attempted California's so-called mega ramp.
If you're in the air for so long, I'm just getting my frequent flyer miles as I'm, you know, having fun. And then the landing is the hard, scary part. That was operator error.
He's never down for long. This promotional video shows Fotheringham as a star performer in Nitro Circus, an extreme sports show. He goes by the nickname Wheels.
You got it! Good job!
But it's at events like this one, outside Dallas, where he really connects with fans.
You shredding?
Yeah, I'm shredding.
Fotheringham has teamed up with volunteers to encourage children in wheelchairs to push the limits. 11-year-old Luke Acuna lost his left leg when he was hit by a garbage truck 3 years ago.
What would you say is the biggest thing you've learned from him?
Never give up. If you fall and eat it really hard, get back up and do it again. Woo!
It's just so much happiness floating around, you know. It's cool seeing these kids, seeing how much they can accomplish and, you know, breaking all the stereotypes.
Fotheringham is now thinking about the next trick that will impress an audience already captivated by the fact that while he cannot walk, he can soar.
The long security lines, the delays, the fees, the lack of leg room. It is perhaps not surprising that incidents of air rage are on the rise these days. What is surprising is to see a full-on meltdown play out on videotape, as just happened on a cross-country flight. Tonight, David Wright takes us inside this incident and inside the minds of the crew members who increasingly have to deal with this kind of thing.
Freak out at 40,000 feet.
All of a sudden, this guy who was sleeping just woke up out of nowhere and started flipping out.
The passenger on this JetBlue flight to Las Vegas this weekend so distraught, he punched and kicked the seats of his neighbors as flight attendants struggled to restrain him.
Everyone's freaking out. I was a little nervous. I wasn't sure what the guy was trying to actually do.
We do apologize for the inconvenience.
And it's become surprisingly common. According to the International Air Transport Association, incidents of air rage are up dramatically. More than 8,000 incidents worldwide this past year, including physical assaults, drunkenness, and just rude behavior.
I'm pointing. You told me to point. Don't be a hot ass.
There's a bomb on the plane! YouTube is full of examples.
There's a bomb!
Flight attendants say they can often spot likely troublemakers well before takeoff.
It's not hard to spot them. On my last flight, a guy walked on and say, "Hi, how are you?" "I'm not happy."
Once you're up in the air, in a confined space with, let's face it, limited creature comforts, things can escalate fast.
Whoa. That's it, you're stuck 6 hours in a flying tube at 35,000 feet. But if something escalates in flight, no one's coming. There's no police to call, there's no firemen to call.
Alcohol isn't the only fuel for in-flight outbursts. Any small issue can get blown out of proportion when the air is thin.
Everybody's just yelling at everybody. No one has empathy.
That's gotten a bit better since the FAA recently allowed us to keep our electronic pacifiers going from gate to gate. Here in the U.S., officials say incidents of unruly passengers are down. Alec Baldwin's probably happy about that. He famously refused to stop playing Words with Friends on an American Airlines flight. Got thrown off the plane. Then went on Saturday Night Live to jokingly ask for an apology.
And on behalf of everyone at American Airlines, issue an apology to Mr. Alec Baldwin.
Famous faces have to be just as careful as the rest of us. Just ask Naomi Campbell. In 2008, her first-class tirade on board a British Airways flight became international news, ultimately landing her in court.
I'm not saying what my behavior was correct. I guess I just took it too far, maybe.
The supermodel pled guilty to assaulting 2 police officers. She agreed to pay a fine, but avoided jail time. Reportedly, BA banned her for life. Crew members can lose it too. The most famous examples being Captain Clayton Osborne, filmed ranting in the aisle on a flight from New York to Las Vegas. The co-pilot got an off-duty pilot to replace him in the cockpit, while a passenger, who happened to be a former corrections officer, restrained the ranting pilot.
He kicked the door. He kicked the door and almost buckled. He says, "It's me, let me in. This is where we take the plane down."
The plane diverted to Amarillo, Texas, where the captain was sent for psychiatric evaluation and eventually charged with interfering with a flight crew. The other famous cabin crew incident was when flight attendant Stephen Slater memorably quit his job over the loudspeaker, grabbed a beer from the drinks cart, popped the emergency exit, and went down the inflatable slide.
Did you know at that point that you were ending your career as a flight attendant?
Oh, yes.
This was a dramatic exit.
It was a dramatic exit.
This weekend, there were not 1 but 2 incidents on JetBlue. In addition to the freak out en route to Vegas, there was another incident involving a mother and her 3-year-old daughter. An overzealous flight attendant refused to let the 3-year-old go to the bathroom during a long delay on the tarmac. The child ended up peeing on her seat.
I didn't have any towels or napkins with me. No one offered to bring me anything to help clean it up. I took the sweater off my body and soaked up the mess with my clothes.
When the girl's mother got up to dry off her daughter, even though the fasten seatbelt sign was lit, the JetBlue flight crew was less than sympathetic.
We have a non-compliant passenger on this flight. We're bringing her back to the gate to security.
An off-duty pilot and other passengers who witnessed the incident intervened on the woman's behalf. JetBlue has now offered her an apology. There will be no apology forthcoming for the other JetBlue incident this weekend, but no criminal charges either. Flight attendants handcuffed and subdued the unruly passenger on the New York to Vegas flight, escorting him to the rear of the plane away from other passengers. The captain then diverted the plane to Detroit.
As soon as we get the passenger off, we'll be right back on our way.
Where everyone had to wait 2 hours as police took the passenger into custody. Authorities now say the cause of this mid-air meltdown was a medical issue. The passenger evaluated at a hospital and later released. He's home now. Authorities say the 62-year-old passenger won't be charged with a crime because the plane was never in jeopardy. Although at 45,000 feet, it can be hard to tell.
The situation is very bad there. Tanks are firing. The bazaar in the Mir Ali area is completely destroyed because of bombing from jets. Now there are no shops left in the bazaar.
We're not against the operation, but they should provide safe passage for locals.
और ट्रांसपोर्ट का बंदोबस्त कर दिया जाए लोगों को सख्त तकलीफ है न बिजली है और न पानी मिलते हैं न खुराक का सामान है
People are facing problems. There's no electricity, no food, no water. Everyone is stuck there. They're dying. People are facing troubles at checkpoints.
इसे महफूज रास्ते पे मुंतकिल कर दिया जाए
It is about ensuring
that the basic principles and standards of the European Union are followed in a way that safeguards the European values, such as the independence of the judiciary and separation of powers. Let me in this respect recall the importance of early consultations on legislation affecting judiciary, rule of law, and other relevant areas ahead of the adoption of legislation in order to ensure that it brings Turkey closer to the European Union standards and not farther away.
The factory is now completely destroyed. My neighbour's factory had the same fate. These raids can be compared to an earthquake.
This morning, when I arrived here to the workshop, I was surprised by this enormous destruction. My neighbour's machines were also destroyed. It was a factory for making paintings and furniture.
وهذا المحل محل دهان محل خشب.
Israeli troops have rounded up dozens more senior Hamas activists as part of a feverish search for 3 kidnapped Israeli teenagers who Israel alleges were seized by the Islamic militant group. The 3 went missing last week while they were hitchhiking home from a school in the West Bank.
We just wish to hug our children home. Naftali, Eyal, Gilad, we love you, we miss you. Please be strong. Hold on, be strong. We love you, we want to hug you again.
Hamas has praised the kidnapping, but has not taken responsibility. The latest arrest brought the total number of Palestinians detained since the teens disappeared to over 200, most of them Hamas activists, in the biggest West Bank crackdown on the militant group in almost a decade. As the search for the teens expanded, Israeli warplanes struck 4 weapons and militant sites in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military said it was in response to a rocket launch from Gaza into Israel on Monday.
I cannot think of anyone more deserving of the James Smithson Bicentennial Medal. And I thank you, Ralph Lauren. I thank your family, your birth family, the family that you and Ricky have created together. I thank those who worked with you to create a great American company. I thank you for representing what is best about the country we love.
I've always been inspired by America. I've made American flag sweaters. I've done other things that had reference, not for profits, but because I believed in it. And I believed in the history of America. And I'm not a historian. So I was truly touched and never thought I was going to get an award. Didn't think I was going to get a medal. Some people think, was that a public relations comment that Ralph made? It wasn't a public relations. It came from the heart.